Dot Foods also helping those in need with donations to 15 food pantries throughout the area. Dot kicked off their Neighbor to Neighbor program at the Lutheran Church in Quincy this morning. The program is planned around the holidays to donate to food pantries in the areas where their employees work and live. The program incentivizes employees to volunteer with nonprofits. In exchange, Dot awards the employees with PTO, or they will make a donation on the employee's behalf of $400 to a local nonprofit.
There's been certainly plenty of times where some of those same volunteers that show up are the same folks who have benefited with the program at some point in their life, because that's the thing about these food pantries is that's exactly what they're here for. You never know when you're going to need that type of assistance.
Ed Mock says this isn't unique to just Dot's Mount Sterling facility. Each of their 13 distribution centers also have a unique program where they're donating more than $500,000.